welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're going to be talking about Sammy Watkins, the Buffalo Bills wide receiver. He was a top 10 selection in the 2014 class and has since become less popular for some reason. Some people are starting to call him a bust. Some people are just getting angry about him, saying he's not good. Lots of stuff like that I kind of want to unpack when it comes to Sammy Watkins, because despite what people say, there's actually a lot of data pointing towards the fact that Sammy Watkins is actually a very good wide receiver, on top of what he looked like coming out of college. It's just that he happens to be stuck in the offense that he's stuck in, and I'll get in a little bit more of that when the video goes on. But I figured Sammy Watkins is a very good wide receiver to profile. He's in a situation where he might go to another football team. I mean, I'm not saying that it is 100% possible. It's just that you get the feeling with the fan base that they kind of want to move on from him for whatever reason, and from other sort of. And again, these might be the minority. It's just the general feel is that people are down on Sammy Watkins, and I figured let's kind of unpack some of the concerns that people may have about him and what he looked like coming out of college, and of course what he actually has done in the NFL. Now, for those that aren't familiar with some of the terms I'm going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about passing yardage market share production. Passing yardage market share production, for those that aren't very familiar with that term, is where you take an individual offensive statistic and you divide it by the team total statistic. So in this case, if you take a wide receiver that has 1,000 yards in a 4,000 yard passing offense, then that wide receiver had 25% passing yardage market share. And what you do is you take that number and you compare it to every single wide receiver since the 1969 NFL draft class, and then you're able to compare how one wide receiver performed to another wide receiver, and then so on and so forth in terms of that particular metric. So you're able to just kind of get a feel for, okay, this is where the majority of the 5-time All-Pro players performed. This is where most of the 3-time All-Pro players performed, the Pro Bowl players, and of course the long-term starters. So it kind of gives you a general feel for where the majority of those players, at least 95% of those types of players since 1969, ended up in that particular area. So that's kind of the area that you want to shoot for, essentially, if you're trying to get that type of player. And then, of course, we're going to look at athleticism data. The athleticism data specifically is explosive lower body strength score, the speed score, and the flexibility score. Explosive lower body strength is where you take the vertical and the broad jump measured against mass density. Essentially, you're trying to figure out if this wide receiver, made leg day a lot, if they didn't neglect it. And, of course, the speed score is the 40-yard dash measured against mass density, which, of course, is weight divided by height. And then it's also look at the flexibility score, which is the short shell / straight cone measured against mass density as well, which is a good sort of gauge for how flexible a wide receiver is in terms of that other sort of data as well. And we're also going to look at his NFL production, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's the same method as the passing yardage market share. The NFL data does not go back as far as the 1969 class, but it does go at least to 2005. Which is a fairly decent size sample. I am working on making it a little bit larger just so that I can provide a little bit more context to wide receivers and bring up a couple more case studies for wide receivers in the past. But at least for right now, all you really need to know is that the NFL market share production is the same methodology. It's just that it's only applied to the 2005 NFL season. So that's really all you need to know there. With all that stuff out of the way, let's get to Sammy Watkins in terms of what he looked like coming out of college, what his athleticism looks like, and then, of course, what he looks like in the NFL. And whether people should be concerned or hopeful or should they move on, all that kind of stuff. We'll get into some of that stuff. But the bottom line is, let's get into Sammy Watkins. So starting out with Sammy Watkins coming out of college, he had a 90.27 passing yardage market share production score. Now, essentially, based on this score, he hit every single production threshold that you want a wide receiver to hit. He hit the 5-time All-Pro threshold, which is the majority of 5-time All-Pro wide receivers at least hit 85 or higher. He hit the 3-time All-Pro range of 80 or higher, the 3-time Pro Bowl range of 68 or higher, and the long-term starter range of 58 or higher. So he pretty much hit every single production threshold that you want a wide receiver to hit coming out of college. So there was no real red flags to Sammy Watkins coming out of college when it comes to his production. And neither his athleticism. He had a 79.67 explosive lower body strength score, a 96.41 speed score, and an 87.48 flexibility score. Based on my data as well, he hits every single threshold you want to hit. When it comes to the wide receiver position, you only need to have one athleticism score of 54 or higher. So whether that's your explosiveness, your speed, your flexibility, all you need is one of those types of traits. And in Sammy Watkins' case, he had above average in each one. Every single one of his athleticism traits hits at least the threshold that you need to hit in terms of that wide receiver athleticism. He's predominantly a speed wide receiver. I mean, that's pretty clear. He has a 96.41 overall speed score. I mean, that is his best athletic trait, if you will. But he does have pretty decent explosiveness for his size, and he does have pretty decent flexibility for his size as well. So for the most part, his athleticism data, it passes everything that you want a wide receiver to pass. Meaning that coming out of Clemson, he had at least all-pro potential. I mean, that is an easy thing to say based on his athleticism and also based on his production coming out of college. However, when you get to his NFL production, this is where it's been... this is where the concerns largely come from, is the fact that his season has been a little up and down in terms of his NFL career, but he hasn't been a terrible wide receiver by any stretch of the imagination. From 2014 to 2015, he was showing a lot of progress in terms of his production. In 2014, he had an 88.90 production score, which is at least a top 25 wide receiver. For a rookie wide receiver, that's pretty dang good for any wide receiver, to be honest. So he put up a top 25 performance as a rookie. Again, that isn't quite Odell Beckham Jr. or Antonio Brown level, but for a rookie wide receiver, it's pretty dang good to score 88.90 in terms of your percentile score. And then in 2015, he had a 93.32 production score. And if you actually look at 2015, his production was pretty much on par with Mike Evans in terms of his market share production in 2015. So his production has not been that bad. It's been pretty dang good. It's just that last year in 2016, he of course was battling injuries and had a bunch of other sort of stuff that kind of hurt him a bit. But the bottom line is his production has been fine. And the other thing that I think I really want to point out to you guys is that Sammy Watkins is unfortunately trapped in a very run-heavy offense. Other than 2014, where if you actually look at the quarterbacks from 2014 to 2016, at least the quarterbacks that were predominantly playing, who got the most of the starts, the offense in general was, in 2014, it was actually a very pass-heavy offense with only a 6.4 run percentage, which that's compared to every offense in the NFL in 2014. But in 2015 to 2016, it became very run heavy, with the run heaviest of all in 2016, where 98.54 was your run percentage compared to the NFL in 2016, which is by far one of the highest run percentages that you could imagine, in terms of an offense in the NFL. So the offense has largely become a more run-heavy, run-based offense. And as a result, the passing yardage is going to go down. And this is why I really do preach market share production in terms of how to view wide receivers, because, a wide receiver can't help it if he's in an offense that doesn't put up the types of stats that, say, a Drew Brees-like offense puts up. Like a wide receiver can't really do anything about that in that particular case. So despite the fact that Sammy Watkins, like in particular his 2015 season, you may look at it on paper and go, oh, he wasn't really that great. But when you actually look at the market share production and you look at the factors that he was in a very run-heavy based offense, which should be evident in terms of, 2015, he was in a very run-heavy offense. And, of course, 2016 was in a very run-heavy offense. That you're just not going to put up a ton of raw stats in offenses that are like that. So you have to view these wide receivers in terms of goodness in a totally different way because of that sort of factor, in terms of that particular variable, if you will. So if you actually look at Sammy Watkins again, his career's been fine. There really is nothing glaring, or like, this isn't like a Laquan Treadwell like career. Laquan Treadwell basically did nothing as a rookie. Sammy Watkins, his first year as an NFL player, put up at least top 25 performance, in terms of his rookie year. 2015, he put up a very, very high. It wasn't top 10 level, but at least it was in top 15, and it was right next to Mike Evans, who's another guy who people say is one of the greatest wide receivers, at least young wide receivers in the NFL, and Watkins was pretty much on par with Mike Evans in terms of market share production in that particular season. And, of course, in 2016, Sammy Watkins ran into a couple issues in terms of injuries. And that is really the only blemish that you can really criticize Watkins about, is that he's never, been a completely healthy wide receiver. He's had his bumps. He's had his bruises. He's had a couple seasons that were cut short due to injury. So that's the only real thing to criticize the man about. But if you look at the indicators, again, if you look at his production in college, he had a pretty much 5-time All-Pro potential in terms of his passing yards market share in college. He has athleticism traits across the board that are above average. And on top of that, he had at least one top 15 performance in 2015, which was his sophomore season as an NFL player. There's a lot of positives pointing in the right direction for Sammy Watkins. So, despite the fact that people want to label him a bust and want to, it's this 2014 class of wide receivers is really tough. It's a really tough class to measure yourself against, because there was so many good wide receivers in that class. Odell Beckham Jr., of course, Mike Evans, already mentioned him. Allen Robinson, of course, had one particular season that was really, really good as well. So there's a ton of wide receivers that had very good seasons. In terms of that class. And, Watkins has kind of been lost in the sauce. And a big reason that's been contributing to that is because the offense of the Buffalo Bills has become more run-centric. If you're in a run-centric offense compared to the rest of the NFL, you're just not going to put up the types of stats that you would if you were in a Saints-like offense, or even a Patriots-like offense. If you're in an offense that has 5,000 yards of passing yardage, you're going to have stats. You're going to put up stats. But if you're not in that type of offense, you need another way to measure their performances. And in my opinion, market share is the best way to kind of, measure how a guy's performing compared to their team, in terms of their individual offense. And at least in Sammy Watkins' case, he's been performing. He's had a very good season in 2015. He had a very promising rookie season in 2014, despite what some people might say. And, last year was just kind of a wash, but who knows, maybe if he was actually healthy, he would have a resurgence. But I would say the book is not yet written on Sammy Watkins. He showed lots of good indicators in terms of coming out of college, in terms of his athleticism, and in terms of what he's actually done in his NFL career. And I think it's way too soon for people to just say that it's all over, it's done, it was the wrong decision. Because in particular, there have been wide receivers like Julio Jones, who the first 3 seasons of his career, he was injured, he had up and downs, he had growing pains, all that kind of stuff, while A.J. Green was just kind of just dominating. And then, of course, Julio Jones got extremely hot and has become one of the most productive wide receivers, if not the most productive wide receivers in terms of market share in the last 3 seasons. So don't be surprised if Sammy Watkins has a really good resurgence in the future, because he has all the indicators showing that he can be just as good as all the other wide receivers that have been, getting more praise than him. It's just a matter of getting him in the right type of offense, which maybe that's what it takes. Maybe if the Buffalo Bills can start becoming a more pass-heavy type of offense, then you'll actually see him to put up the stats indicative of all these other guys, and he'll get some more credit. And maybe that's just the sort of battle he's always going to have. But the bottom line is there's a lot of positives with Sammy Watkins, and I think that the best is yet to come for him, because he showed everything that you want out of a wide receiver coming out of college. in terms of his athleticism and in terms of his actual NFL production. It's just a matter of him having a completely healthy season and then, of course, performing like he should perform in the future, which I hope he does. So again, my name is James Coburn. You can find my work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.